Another person coming in the door. How are we doing tonight? Yeah, we can do better than that. Come on, let's raise the vibe. How are we doing tonight? Woo! Is there anyone for whom this is their first time here at the Rose O'Neill Literary House? You've all been here before? Right, so you know where restrooms are, and then we have some refreshments in the kitchen afterwards, so please avail yourself of the tequila, lime, shrimp, and other tasty bits. So, welcome everybody. I voted today. I voted. Yay! Please go vote. And you can do so early, like I did. I'm Dr. Hall. I am the director of the Rose O'Neill Literary House. This visit from Diannely Antigua would not have been possible without folks like the Sophie Kerr Committee, so I wanted to say thank you to my colleagues in English, and also the other staff here at the Rose O'Neill Literary House, including Roy Kesey, our Associate Director. Oh, I have hold for applause in my notes, but I guess that's... What did you do in class this week? Amber Talianisich, our assistant director, who's out there on the living room. We can clap for her too. Linda Hamrick, our center coordinator, who's right there handling the sound. Thank you. And Faye Dorman, who's taking pictures and is our social media and marketing intern. Thank you so much, Faye. And Joe, who made posters. I don't see Joe, but we can clap for the posters. All right. What is it to be unbroken? Diannely Antigua writes in one of the sad girl sonnets that populate Good Monster, her most recent collection. And in another poem she writes, quote, I admit I don't know a love that doesn't destroy. It's so telling that though naming the ways that love makes us vulnerable to one another, paving the roads for damage to crash its machinery in our hearts, the collection also keeps making itself vulnerable, sees vulnerability as a kind of superpower. And here I'd like to say, please turn off your cell phones. My partner gets to ring through, which is what just happened, but please do just silence those things. He's gonna get an angry text. All right, so the collection keeps being vulnerable, even though it's difficult to make yourself available and vulnerable to naming the ways that violence impacts us. But you know, if I tell you everything, the words the world uses, then I disarm the world. The poems aren't confessions, they are shields, they are artillery, they become the way in which you reclaim your life. The speaker of these poems has faced many a breaking force. These are poems that recount and transform several violences, including childhood sexual abuse, growing up in an oppressive and controlling religious sect, intimate partner violence, and the resultant mental health struggles that are born from surviving such violences, including suicidal ideation. When you've experienced your home as a place of violence, when you've experienced your church and your God as a means of control and erasure and oppression, quote, when God is a house I can't leave, then what rebellions you turn to save your life. My being alive is a protest, Antigua told one interviewer, even if it is a protest against something inside of me that I am struggling with. Diannely Antigua is a Dominican-American poet and educator, born and raised in Massachusetts. She's the author of 2 poetry collections, Ugly Music from Yes Yes Books, which was the winner of the Pamet River Prize and a 2020 Whiting Award. And Good Monster, Copper Canyon Press, just came out, 2024. She received her BA in English from the University of Massachusetts Lowell, where she won the Jack Kerouac Creative Writing Scholarship, and received her MFA at NYU, where she was awarded a Global Research Initiative Fellowship to Florence, in Italy, that one. She's the recipient of additional fellowships from Canto Mundo, Community of Writers, Fine Arts Work Center Summer Program, and was a finalist for the 2021 Ruth Lilly and Dorothy Sargent Rosenberg Poetry Fellowship. Her work has been nominated for the Pushcart Prize and chosen for the Best of the Net anthology. In 2022, Antigua was named the Poet Laureate of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, the youngest and first person of color to serve in that position. A bit later, she was awarded an Academy of American Poets Laureate Fellowship to develop the Bread and Poetry Project, for which she produced a terrific podcast that builds community through breaking bread with poets. She currently teaches in the MFA writing program at the University of New Hampshire as the inaugural Nosrat Yassini Poet in Residence. Please help me to welcome again to the podium, Diannely Antigua.
Thank you so much, James, Dr. Hall, for that intro. It's been funny, I've been saying Dr. Hall today, I'm like, I don't know Dr. Hall. Awesome. Thank you all so much for having me this evening, and I'm just so grateful to be able to read some poems. I'm going to read from Ugly Music, Good Monster, and then I might sprinkle in a new thing or two. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to just set some type of timer to keep me accountable. Okay. And as James said, my poetry does deal with some sensitive topics such as suicidal ideation, domestic violence, sexual abuse, and religious abuse. So please do take care of yourselves as you see fit. If you need to leave the room, or if these topics you're sensitive to those, feel free to do what you need to do to take care of yourselves. Okay, so I think I'm going to start with a poem from Ugly Music. Re-education. I listen to podcasts to learn about feminism, watch porn to make sure I'm doing it right. I dance on the bar because Coyote Ugly, because these shoes and this drink. I'm almost 30, and I still think Bloody Mary is a game with a mirror. Sometimes she appears at 2 a.m. Sometimes she's in the toilet, piss reflection before the flush. There is a truth in this magic. The time I took Plan B, then the other time I took Plan B, I bled for 2 months. There could have been a mother in me. And I told no one except the man at Tacos Lupita who asked what I wanted in my burrito, and I think I said, baby. I think I spun around 3 times and whispered a name, and there was no floor when I fell. When a queen flew from my womb, there was glass and napkins, and the doctor saying, wake up, wake up. Also, feel free to respond if you want to go or snap or clap, or you can also boo me. That's also fine too. I accept any and all reactions. You don't have to love what I'm reading. Okay. I think I'll jump to Poem and Good Monster. So I actually want to talk a little bit about Good Monster and the title, just to give you a little bit of just some background and some context. So I've been doing a particular type of therapy called internal family systems, or IFS, and it's essentially parts work. And I've been doing that type of therapy for about 12 years now. And in this type of work, you name the parts of yourself. And I have a part called my monster. And my monster is my anxiety, depression, and boundless need. All those parts are neighbors. They're kind of their own little trinity of sorts. And collectively, I call them my monster. And my monster likes to act up a lot. Over the years, I villainized this monster. I felt like this monster was wreaking havoc in my life and pushing people away as opposed to bringing them in. And I hated this monster, and I just didn't want anything to do with it. But the more I hated the monster, the louder she became. And it wasn't until I learned to accept the monster and also understand the monster. Why was the monster reacting and behaving in these ways? So I had to learn how to parent myself, or reparent myself, sit down with the monster and get to know her a little bit. So through that work, I've been able to, begin healing the monster. And healing is ongoing and it doesn't end. But I've been, doing that important work for some time. And this book, in a way, is my love letter to my monster. She's often been silenced, and I wanted her to have the opportunity to speak for an entire book long. And I'm interested in how this monster's role can change throughout my life, and not always be the villain in the story. So that's a little bit about the monster. Okay. I'm going to read, let's see, Chronically. I'll read that one since you quoted from it. Chronically. It started at 16, when instead of falling in love with Jesus, I fell in love with a boy, a bit of God's wrath, now living in my right shoulder, right hip, right side of my newly kissed neck. I knew he was jealous. God, not the boy. Instead of proverbs before bed, I spoke to the boy on the phone, whispering, my body cramped in the dark corner of the living room, my family already asleep. I told the boy I loved him, my breathy hallelujah, like the hush of the MRI machine taking me into its mouth, or the x-rays, or my silent bending over in the blue paper gown, little ass out in front of the doctor as he checked my spine. The boy checked my spine, too. As he reached under my shirt, unhooked my padded bra, this was before the diagnosis. The word itself sounding like a disease. Diagnosis. How it shares the first 3 letters of my name. Diagnosis. If I could take my tiny shovel hand, carve out the synapses from my head, shoulders, knees, and toes. Oh, bless, bless, bless. It is meaningless how invisible the body in pain. When God is a house I can't leave. Okay, I'm going to read a poem about a dog for our new friend here. I feel like during the pandemic, everyone either was baking bread or getting a puppy. And I was not baking bread, unfortunately, but the person I was seeing at the time ended up getting a puppy. So that was an adventure in itself. So this poem is called Training. The puppy won't stop eating rocks and moss. Sometimes I pry open her mouth to find whole splinters of bark on her pink tongue. We try to train her to sit, to stick out her paw when we ask. When she poops in the house, we bring it to the yard so she knows where to go next time. And later, after it's dried in the sun, after the flies have had their fill, we scoop it up and throw it in the woods. Here, the world is perpetual march, and we love a dog as if that's the only thing that we can do, as if death cannot touch this slice of New England, the trees growing a canopy of shade, just for us. Yesterday, we strapped the smallest life jacket to her furry body and took her swimming for the first time. We watched her paddle from the shore to the center of the lake, then back again until she grew tired. And last night, while we argued about things that won't matter in a month, he was still petting the puppy's wet head. And I cried like I'd never known a kindness so pure and gentle as that, as a pat on the head for doing nothing but existing. I wouldn't call this jealousy, but I have no word in my human tongue that seems appropriate. It's the feeling of all the stones I swallowed in my youth growing jagged in my belly, and I scratch the surface of my skin with any sharp thing I can find to cut them out. I'm going to dive into a sad girl sonnet or two. As James mentioned, I went to Florence, Italy during my grad school time at NYU. And before I went to Italy, I had just been broken up with, which is a trend of mine, just being broken up with. It's lovely, you should try it sometime. But I had actually I'd finished my thesis, and this was intended to be a thesis semester, so I was like, well, my thesis is done, I'm going to embark on an entirely new project. I'm going to write breakup sonnets. And I named these sonnets the Sad Girl Sonnets. So this is Sad Girl Sonnet number 1. Even in the most beautiful city, you can still be sad as fuck. There is the Duomo, Palazzo Vecchio, and the waiter from the bar downstairs who shouts Bella as you pass. I've been eating Doritos on the couch again. I've been blocking out my noise. Watching QVC in Italian, I want to buy useless shit even more. The way the woman describes the sweater. Lunghi, taglia, nero. I need it. I need someone to say, fall in love. Fall for the city. Fall on your hands and knees and suck your fingers for practice. Last month, was there a hidden grace to peeing with the door open? He said he liked to watch, and now no one sees me lift up the seat, hover over the bowl. Every city has a sewer. Indeed, it's true. Every city has shit underground. Just so you know. Fun fact. Fun fact. Take a sip of water. Okay. Let's see, what else can I read here? I have this series of poems in the book called Another Poem About Blank, but really it's about me. I have another poem about God, but really it's about me. Another poem about an ex, but really it's about me. This one is another poem about nature. But really, it's about me. I'm not used to all this nature. The robin and the blue jay perch on the railing outside my window while I sip coffee. The centipede scurries in the sink next to the dirty spoon. I leave the birds alone, but the centipede has to go. I name it Ben after one of my exes and drown it. Send it down the drain. All exes live there. Down the drain where they've crawled out of the pipe sludge to the clean stainless steel of the undermount sink. By the way, this is a borrowed kitchen. By the way, this is a borrowed life. I don't belong in a log cabin in the woods where the squirrels are actually startled. I want the don't give a fuck attitude of a New York squirrel eating from the palms of whoever has something to give. The leftover crumbs from the morning's bacon, egg, and cheese, or the last bit of falafel dipped in hummus from Moon's. But wasn't that a borrowed life, too? I was supposed to be a preacher's wife. Skirt to my ankles, Bible in my purse, and I was supposed to be a mother. The doctors don't know if this body can cradle the egg before it's flushed, and I'm not supposed to be jealous of the birds, or the squirrel, or the drowned centipede. How easy it was to blame it, and then let the water run. I'm going to read the poem that is on the beautiful, gorgeous broadside that Amber designed. It's out there. I believe it's for sale. Is that correct? Yes. Absolutely gorgeous. So do pick one up. And they were printed right here, right in that other room. So this is Fishing Out the Condom Has Me Believing in God. Fishing out the condom has me believing in God again. I reach in with my index finger, get swallowed by the grooved flesh. I escape a baby like Jonah escaped Nineveh. Is this what it means to be loved by the Lord, swallowed by his whale? The man from the internet says he'll pay for the pill, and fast forward, he doesn't. Tomorrow, I will drive to 3 pharmacies just to unbaby me. Maybe this was God's will after all. I am thrown overboard by the loss of my beloved. I build a throne for mourning, McChicken wrappers and cans of ginger ale when the beloved yelled. Sometimes it was my fault. Sometimes I knew better than to leave my little need out where he could see. I pry open the plastic with kitchen scissors and place the singular scored pill in my palm. After 3 days, my body will bleed out my profit as if nothing ever happened. I haven't read a diary entry poem. That's another series that's in my book. And the diary entry poems are actually collage poems using old journals. I've been writing in journals since I was 9 years old. And since 9 years old, I've filled 40 journals. And I use them now to write poems. And I number them after the journal that it comes from. And this is diary entry number 34, Epigenetics. And this poem is also where the title of the book comes from as well, Good Monster. Diary entry number 34, epigenetics. It's been 8 years, and the ancestors and me are still burdened. I don't know if I'm gentle with them. I reheat the coffee in the microwave and find gratitude when they take what's theirs and then leave the rest. There will always be scarcity, less food, less Klonopin, which is to say I own a legacy of fear. Tonight, another grandmother is dying, and I cannot heal her. But I line up my idols like bruises on my belly and perform a nostalgic ritual. I shower with my clothes on like I did as a girl with a man who wanted to be my father. When I became a little bird, helpless to affection. Did he make me a good monster or a bad one? I can keep my cage clean, wipe my mouth with my thumb. I wish I had funnier poems. I think maybe now I am going to read a poem about wings. I'm going to do it. To lighten the load. Just to lighten the load. Let's read a poem about wings. Some of the students earlier heard me read this poem about 10-cent Wing Wednesday, which I happen to like. There's a bar back home. It's called The Goat, and they have 10-cent wings on Wednesday. You order 10, it's $1. You have to buy a drink, and the drink doesn't have to be alcoholic at all. So you could buy a Coke and get wings, and it's like $5, and it's great. You know, after tip, $5. So this is called On 10-Cent Wing Wednesday. On 10-cent Wing Wednesday, the love I can't have sends me home with wings, buffalo sauce on the side, so they don't get soggy, he says. Blue cheese, too. 10 wings at 10 cents each. He gives them to me for free. That's how I know he still loves me on a Wednesday. That's how I know love. When he sends me home, wings me, sends me to the side. I am soggy. He sogs me. On a Wednesday, I love all the buffalo I can't have. I am free of sense less, love less. I am blue. 10 sides of me, 10 ways to be someone's less. On Wednesday, no one wants the free cheese. Say something borrowed. Say something blue to me. He says blue is for Wednesdays. Each Wednesday, love has left me unwed. I leave my wings. I am still. I ask to be unsent. I ask for nothing on the side. I am sauced with him, sogged all the way home. I never know if it's home in or hone in. So I hone in on him. I home in on him. My home's blued with him. I make blue to him. Love the blue in him. I make less love to him. I make love with the love that's left on a Wednesday. That one's fun. Do I have any Twilight fans in here this evening? Anyone?
Oh, there's some hands.
Anyone? Okay. Have we all watched Twilight fans? All of the movies, at least? Okay. So I have a poem, a Twilight poem. It's called Bella, Where the Hell Have You Been, Loca? You're so welcome. So this is in the voice of Bella. She's responding. So, Bella, where the hell have you been, Loca? I've been in my room. The months circling around me, a montage of everything I've missed. The big leaf maple turning, the underslip of the first snow, the Douglas firs in the distance, still green. Last year, we were in love, irrevocably, a word that I've just learned means I will not recover. What is it to attract a killer to your bed with only your scent? What is it to welcome it? He compared me to heroin, his own personal brand, and I'd do anything to enter his veins. There, I could outrun him. I'm trying to reach the brink of death and still remain. I crash the motorcycle on the rocks, then apologize for bleeding. You're so welcome. Thank you. That one was fun. Let's see how we are with time. Okay, maybe I'll read a few more and then I will let you all get on with your lives. But I hope that now you can go somewhere for 10 Cent Wine Wednesday and be like, there's a poem here, you know? Because poetry is truly, I believe, it's anywhere. You just have to look for it. And yeah. Okay. Let's see. I want to read something brand new. All right. So I try to do this thing every week where I write at least 100 words. Definitely, I write more by Sunday every week. That way, I'm accountable to myself. I've written something, and it doesn't have to be finished or feel like a poem, but I want to at least kind of maintain some type of practice. So this poem is called Long Distance Obad, and an obad is a poem. Actually, that's not the one I want to read. This one, The Morning After, kind of the same thing. But an obad is a poem about two lovers departing at sunset, and also the morning after is the morning after, which is basically an obad. So this is The Morning After. In movies, usually the camera pans to the floor, pink underwear and black socks. Someone is late for work, or someone wakes up in an empty bed only to find their lover naked in the kitchen making breakfast. I wake up with the phone still in my hand from his 2,000-mile distance. I'm not one for sexting. I barely take pictures these days, my body turning less than supple and more like the peach I let over-ripen on the counter, one finger away from bruise. Today, he tells me he's been researching cutting board maintenance, the proper way to oil them after years of service, lest they crack, lest they become something to hide in the cupboard when company comes. I make myself into metaphor when nobody asks. I've been hidden in too many cupboards. He tells me there are more things to oil: the boots, the table legs, the chair. I marvel at his care for the objects in his life. I remember the objects others have thrown at me: the glass, the phone, the plant. I'm grateful I was standing too far away from them to reach me. Today, I'm grateful I can still be reached. Okay, I'm going to finish with a poem in Good Monster. Let's see. So, I wrote this poem in 2022. I was at a writer's residency in Portland, Oregon, and it was during April, National Poetry Month, and I was there for the whole month. And for me, historically, the spring season is the most difficult because of anniversaries that it brings up. One of them being the passing of my grandmother in 2012. So that was the 10-year anniversary, April 25th, and I was going to be, away from family, away from, my comfort zone and my surroundings. So I wanted to wake up that morning with something that reminded me of my grandmother. And my grandmother's name was Rosa, which in Spanish means rose. So I wanted to wake up that morning to a bouquet of flowers on the table as a way to honor her. She loved pink roses. And I'm a poor poet, and flowers cost money, especially roses. So I made a call on the internet, on Twitter, now X, whatever. And I was just like, hey, this is my Venmo. I want to buy the most beautiful bouquet for, as a way to honor my grandmother. Like, feel free to contribute. And the internet answered the call, and strangers sent me money in order to buy the most beautiful bouquet to honor my grandmother. So that morning I woke up, and there to greet me were pink roses. And when I ordered them, I, wrote in, a little message to myself. And I said, to my monster, you deserve love too. So this poem is called I Buy My Monster Roses. I buy my monster roses, though the people on the internet help too. They send money by pressing a small button on their screens. It would be disingenuous to claim all the credit. We can't heal or hurt alone. I sniff the top of each rose like a newborn scalp, fresh skin and hair only a few days picked. I try to arrange the flowers on my bed, create a romantic scene like all the 90s rom-coms I still watch. I'm stuck in the past. I know. I'm stuck in the present. I know that too. I thought the roses could be a cure, and maybe in a small way they were. Each petal I plucked so gently from the stems gave in to me. Thank you so much.
Just swing it back. Diannely has agreed to take a few questions if anyone would like to ask anything. Yeah. Okay.
Do you still feel, I guess, a disconnect from the freedom of being a squirrel in New York?
Oh.
Can you repeat the question for?
Do I still feel the disconnect from being the squirrel in New York, or?
Like, I guess, have you processed a lot through these poems, and how much do they mean to you?
Yeah, have I processed a lot through these poems, and how much do they mean to me? Definitely, these poems help me to process a lot of my trauma, but also just process the expectations versus reality of things, especially when it comes to the life I thought I was going to live, the life I have now, and then the life that I'm hoping for too. I grew up really religious, and as I mentioned in that poem, I was supposed to be a preacher's wife. I was told at 12 years old by the pastor of the church that I was going to be a preacher's wife, and I was being groomed to be one. They were teaching me how to play piano, how to, lead the singing group, and I knew that, at least at that point, like, that's going to be my job. I'm going to help my husband build his church, and I'm going to have his babies, and that's it, And I thought that was the ultimate position that I could ever hope for. And not to say that that's not something that someone could hope for, but I didn't realize I had other options, and I like to say that, I didn't become a preacher's wife, but what I did become was my own version of a preacher. I'm the preacher. I'm not the preacher's wife anymore. Like, my message is poetry, spreading that gospel, that good news, that poetry has the power to heal and to bring people together, and to help you process just really, really painful and also joyful things. So I truly believe in the power of poetry. So, and I like to tell everyone that, as I've just told you. So. Yeah, that's a question. That was a great question. Thank you.
Hey, so I was at the podcasting event last night as well, where you brought the poem Como Tu and the translation, and that kind of got me thinking. How would you kind of describe like the importance of language and the impact of poetry, and kind of how it goes across like those like language barriers and divides?
So you're mentioning the poem that I read last night, Como Tu, or Like You, by Tokyo Dalton. That was the inspiration of my podcast. And your question is, how do I use language to, or like what's my relationship to language? And what was the rest?
Just kind of how, at least I think that poetry kind of like
Bridges, yeah.
Aspects,
Bridges.
like translations like that, going from one language to another in a poem and still having that same meaning.
Yeah, so it bridges it, and how translation going from one language to another. Okay. Well, for me, I don't do my own, I don't translate my work. However, I do have a sad girl sonnet that was translated into Spanish, and it's in the anthology called The Daughters of Latin America. There's both an English version of that anthology and a Spanish version. And the first time I read the Spanish translation of that poem, I was like, wow, my words have never sounded prettier, than when they were in Spanish. Because to me, there is something just really beautiful about the Spanish language that can't be achieved in English as much as one might hope. And then for me, I've never written something in Spanish and tried to translate it into English. I don't necessarily feel like my mind works in that direction. I didn't translate this poem. It was translated by Raquel Salas Rivera, who is an amazing poet in his own right. So you should definitely check out his work, but also does amazing translations as well. But I tend to, at least when I'm thinking about Spanish in my own work, I tend to sprinkle it in when it feels appropriate. And that, to me, is probably the closest way I can reach the Spanish language and still feel authentically myself, and not feel as though I'm, I guess, like flexing a muscle that I don't have yet, if that makes any sense. But I really appreciate seeing my poem in the Spanish language in a way that I've never, really been able to achieve that myself. And I'm it felt like a transcendent experience seeing that, almost kind of like a magic spell. And it was just really, really beautiful. So thank you for that question. And yes.
I really like your idea about holding yourself accountable and forcing yourself to write like a certain amount every week. Are there other aspects in your life in which you kind of force yourself to be accountable?
Yeah, so you're mentioning how I hold myself accountable to writing every week, and if there are other aspects of my life in which I hold myself accountable. Well, other than like keeping up with my favorite shows, which I don't feel like. A new episode of Abbott Elementary came out, and I was like, I know what I'm doing. Other than that, accountability, I think that one thing that's been really important to me is to do just a daily mental check-in. On Canva, I created this little like checklist, check sheet, kind of one that they might present to you at a doctor's office, where it has like a picture of a body and like a scale of like 1 to 10. So like one of the questions is like on 1 to 10, like how active is the monster today? Or like where do you feel the monster in your body? Circle wherever. And it's a way for me to check in with this part of me that I've gotten to know so well, and I want to stay in touch with her as opposed to forgetting about her. And she tends to act out when she feels ignored. So, implementing that check-in is just a great way for me to stay accountable to her. And it's very healing to do that type of work.
Any last question? Anyone have something they want to? Yeah.
Yes.
What's your process for making your collage poems? Like how do you look back at your journals and decide what you want to put together?
So you're asking what my process is for my collage poems, and how do I figure out what I want to use in those diaries and to write the poems? Is that correct? Okay. So my process for writing a diary entry poem is I go through my bin of diaries that I have, all 40 of them, and at least when I first started, I just chose anyone at random, but now I know which ones I've written poems for, and I'm trying to write at least a poem for all of them through. So I choose one that I haven't written a poem for yet, and I search through and read through some of the entries, and I collect language that is vivid to me, that catches my eye, that includes both nouns and verbs, since I'm going to be building the poem solely out of what I collect. So I need to make sure that there's enough material, enough useful material in order to write the poem. And then I put that all on a piece of paper, and I go through the entire journal. And I will think about the different rules that I have set in place for myself for these collage poems. And one of them is that I can only use what I've collected. I can repeat anything that I want from this list when I write the poem. God, Jesus, the Holy Ghost, and the Holy Spirit, I can interchange them as I'd like, depending on what I've found. I can change the gender, or pronouns or tenses, singular or plural, the things that I found as well. And any filler language like prepositional phrases, I can just pull from the sky and use them as needed for clarity. But really what's most important for me when I'm writing the diary entry poems is to make it as strange as possible, and to just have fun, because I'm dealing with such heavy material, going through those journals and reading and rereading these traumatic events. And my hope is that I can reclaim this space and reclaim this language by playing, because I want to bring joy to it, even if I am dealing with some pretty heavy material. And that makes it easier for me to be able to dive into it is when I approach it from that, as opposed to I'm trying to write a poem that encapsulates this entire journal. Instead, I'm just more interested in how can I capture the emotional truth rather than the factual truth of this journal, and also how can I create strange juxtapositions that I never would do if it weren't for this particular method of writing a poem. So that's always what I think about when I'm approaching one of my diary entry poems.
Can we give another round of applause?
Books and broadsides are for sale and signing in the library just in a moment. Thank you all for coming out. Please come out. Well, come out whenever you want to come out, I guess. I came out in 1997. Yeah, please come out next. Our next reader is Rajiv Mohabir. He'll be here reading on November 13th at 6 p.m. And on the 14th at 2:30 p.m., he's leading an echo poetry workshop down at the Lawrence Wetlands Preserve. We'll have shuttles leaving from the Lit House around 2:15. So you can come here if you want, or you can just go to the Wetlands Preserve at 300 Mill Street in Chestertown. And he'll lead us out in nature to hear like bird sounds and other sounds that we hear, and to translate those into poems. And I have no idea what will happen, but I can't wait to experience it. There's food and drink in the kitchen, so please eat and drink all of that. And again, thank you, Diannely, for being like the prepositions falling from the sky into our lives tonight. It was a really beautiful reading. Thank you. Good night, everyone.